Before I get started, I just wanted to thank Bill Bussey once again for loaning the 2 slide carousels. I had to merge them together to reconstruct this 5-day trip. Hopefully I got it right. This first slide is from Bill's office of Rainier. And just to orient everyone, Rainier is where the yellow pin is, and Seattle's to the north. And then south of Seattle, across the Columbia, is Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Adams. And those will be prominent from where we're going to be here. Zooming in a little bit more, you can see Ashford, which is where you stay before you actually go up to the mountain. Or you can stay at Paradise Inn in Paradise. The two are about 45 minutes away from each other, and certainly not as the crow flies. We'll zoom in a little bit more here, and this is the upper parking lot with the visitor center in the lower left and Paradise Inn in the upper right. And that's where Jim and Bill stayed when they were here in '72. That's the shot from Paradise of Rainier. That's the Paradise Inn in the foreground. They seem to have spectacular weather for this trip. Any tromp up Rainier from Paradise starts in the parking lot, and you work your way through the network of trails to the Muir snowfield and Camp Muir, which is in, I'll show you here with the cursor in just a second. Right there, that's where Camp Muir is. The second day will take you to the top. So you start by working your way up Skyline Trail rather. That's Jim and Bill. And on this trek, Lou Whittaker, who's leading the expedition, the climb, was taking it easy on everybody. This is Pebble Creek, only at 7,200 feet. Had a lunch break, I guess. And then from there they finished the climb, up the hike up to Camp Muir, which is at 10,000 feet. It's 5,000 feet above Paradise and about 4.6 miles of hiking. It's on this ridge line. On the left is the guide hut and RMI headquarters, and on the right is where anybody who's not guided is staying. This is the view from Camp Muir, and Bill Bussey is chopping up the last few steps. That's the view from the guide hut itself, where we stayed this last year. That's Mount Adams. And a few hundred feet above Camp Muir, this kind of gives you the vista. I'll just give you a panorama here. You can't actually see the summit. The most prominent point is Gibraltar Rock, the upper left now. That's Cadaver Gap to its right, and then that's the Cowlitz Glacier, and you go through Cathedral Gap past the Cathedral Rocks there to gain Ingram Glacier. The prominent point on this part of the mountain is Tahoma Peak. It's 11,138 feet. And then sweeping back around to the right, to the south, you can see where we came from. And then on the left is Mount Adams. And in the background there is Mount Hood. And then Mount St. Helens is on the right. And day 2, they made their way across Cowlitz Glacier through Cathedral Gap and up Ingram's Glacier to about 12,000 feet. And you'll see Tahoma Peak in quite a few of these pictures. If we zoom in, it's about 6/10 of a mile as the crow flies across Cowlitz Glacier. Of course, it's much further than that with all the crevasses and up and down. That's Jim Twining in the red cap there. And this view, and the next slide is looking back towards Camp Muir. That's Cathedral Gap. And again, as a bird's eye, we're looking at Cathedral Gap and moving over to the Ingram Glacier. You cannot see the true summit of Rainier from here. That's Disappointment Cleaver on the right. And this is roughly the track that they'll take. This gives you some idea of the scale. That's Tahoma Peak. That's Jim in the red cap, and that's Mount Adams in the background. Adams is 12,277 feet. Here they're at about 11,000 feet or so, looking back down into the valley. And that's Tahoma Peak, the lower limb of it, on the right-hand side there. That's looking up Ingram Glacier towards Cadaver Gap. And we'll get a close-up view. Here's those giant seracs, ice blocks in the glacier. Again, the scale is just staggering. These individual ice block sizes, ice blocks are as big as houses. That's Jim Twining in the blue pack, fixing to traverse a crevasse. Here he's just behind the guide. They're at about 12,000 feet here. This is about as far as they would go this day. That's Bill jumping across a crevasse. And they're returning back to Muir. That's Tahoma Peak in the background. So that ended their first day. They're on their way back and spent the night in Muir again. That's Mount Adams with Bill looking out at the marine layer of clouds there. That's Lou Whittaker, an amazing guy. I met him last year with the crew. Met his wife too. That's Ingrid Widman. There's Bill. And Ingrid walking across Cowlitz Glacier up to where they were practicing some ice climbing. That guide's putting in ice screws, and he's belayed. Must be lunchtime because they're back at Muir, the Marmot. And they're not far from Muir. That notch up at the upper left is Camp Muir itself. So they're on the Cowlitz Glacier, and Bill is contemplating how deep this thing is. That's Dad trying to help Bill out. Now it's Jim's turn. One of these photos is pretty iconic for us growing up. He had this in his office. It's one of the guides showing how to climb out of a glacier. That's Bill rappelling down into a glacier, into a crevasse. That's Jim on his way out. And this day was their summit attempt. Again, they started at Camp Muir. That's where they played around the day before in the crevasses. And I'll zoom out just to give you some perspective. Again, the lavender is where they were the first day, climbing up to Camp Muir, and the red is where they're going to attempt to follow that route across Cowlitz Glacier, right there, through Cathedral Gap, across Ingram Glacier, then up Disappointment Cleaver, and that's Upper Emmons, Ingram Glacier, and then to the dome. Those are the guide rocks right there, the east crater, and then they'll traverse the crater to the actual summit, which is Columbia Crest. They started the day by being astounded by this camp of Japanese climbers who had pitched right by a crevasse. That's Mount St. Helens. Tahoma Peak, I think. That's the upper dome. Again, you can't see the actual summit yet. All this was in darkness for us last year. Sun cups. It's where the sun has really done its work on the glacier. That's Tahoma Peak from the top of Disappointment Cleaver. That's looking down from Disappointment Cleaver to Mount Adams. And now they're on the final stretch, the last 2,000 feet or so. And it's a zigzag course. Switchbacks along the upper dome. You can just see the guide rocks peeking out. That's the edge of the crater. And there they are, the guide summit, which is about 200 feet or so lower than the actual summit. That's Bill. That's Columbia Crest. That's the actual summit. That's their first view. I'll let Dad tell the story that happened in the crater.
One of the younger guides took me and a couple other guys down into the crater, and we actually went into the inside of the crater. They'd only been doing that for about 6 months or so. It's a real heavy hydrogen sulfide smell when you got in there, and huge caverns with underground lakes and everything. It's just incredibly spectacular down there. We all had headlamps on so we could see what was going on. And the guide started saying, we'd walked around for quite a while, and said, okay, you guys wait here. He said, I'm going to check on something, and took off someplace, and they came back, and he says, okay, just wait for a minute. I said, you don't know where the hell you are, do you? He admitted he was lost, too. Shit. So we had to find a little sunshine, a little crevasse, and chop our way out of the thing to get out of there.
And now they're on their way to Columbia Crest after that little adventure. Sure like to get my hands on this guy's film. That's the view from the crest. That's Liberty Cap. And that's Mount Adams in the background behind Jim there. Of course, Bill had a different way of celebrating the summit. Here's Bill signing the register. And tromping back down from the crest. Now they're on their way back to Camp Muir. It's a long walk. That's Ingram Glacier. And here they are back at Muir. And this is the last day. I can tell you're back at Muir with the Marmot. And again, I'll just give you an overview as we fly in here from Paradise. There's Camp Muir. And on this side is the Muir Snowfield. On the opposite side there is the Cowlitz Glacier. And they're going to play on Cowlitz today, building a survival igloo. And here's how you do it. Get a lot of manual labor. Put a Texan inside. Looks cozy, huh? So this is how you get back down from Muir. Kind of gives you the perspective of both days. Just follow the lavender line all the way back down to Paradise. It's about 5,000 feet. Here's the photo of the group, and with Bill kneeling third from left and Jim on the right standing. And Bill took advantage of some of the medical care available. And that's the shot of Rainier in '72 from the highway.